time before the meeting starts.
Ms. Parker, what time do you have?
5:29.
Very good.
I emailed it to you. Do you want a copy of it?
No.
Huh? No, I mean,
I can always get it.
No, do you want a copy? I didn't send it. I didn't get it out.
Oh, well, you can paste it in there. That's over.
You want to do that stuff?
Then, yeah, you can drop it from
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
put it down, have it count. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's happy to play it much easier. Lucky it's
Yes, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. I'm trying to piggyback a little bit.
Hi, 5:30. Call to order the meeting of the Design Review Committee for Monday, October 30th. Before we begin, and I have not discussed this with my fellow member, but I would like to change the order of business as Chair Dandridge did last time. I would recognize first, I guess, roll call. Ms. Patience.
I'm here.
Present, right, present. Chair Dandridge noted it was probably good practice to go ahead and approve our minutes or review our minutes before get into the other business of the meeting. So I would like to amend the agenda to show, to reflect that. I reviewed the minutes. I have no concerns about the way the minutes were prepared. Thank you, ma'am.
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. All right, our second item of business is review of COA 2023-0011. I assume Mr. Cash will be making the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And I want to note for the record, we have received some comments from neighboring county and nearby property owners today. From Mrs. Parker, that was received this afternoon or today. I received 2 items. Is that all the correspondence that you received?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And for the record, has that been forwarded to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. I'll start out a little bit to give a little background for the COA process and design review process, recognizing that we have some people here for their first time. Just to quickly go through it. For the design review committee, it's like staff also does with certificate of approval. There are items that we're expected to consider with any application. First is the proposed structure or building complies with the entrance corridor of the village center overlay, in this case Centerville. That exterior walls have the same or architecturally harmonious materials, color, texture, and treatment. Also, the combination of architectural elements of the improvement are generally in line with the mass, dimension, color, lighting, landscape, roof line, and height, all conform to the accepted architectural principles of permanent buildings and reflect the character of the corridor or overlay district. And in addition, no building can be designed to serve permanently as an advertisement or commercial display and does not exhibit exterior characteristics likely to deteriorate rapidly, be either temporary or short-term architectural aesthetic acceptability, or otherwise constitute a reasonable, foreseeable detriment to the attractiveness and stability of the entrance corridor district. In addition, during the DRC process, you consider applications that are appealed by an applicant or referred by staff. In this case, it was referred by staff. You may approve or deny the application or approve the application with conditions required for compliance, including conditions that delegate approval authority to staff. You may also recommend suggestions to the applicant to assist in any resubmittal if necessary. And we will require applicants submit plans to reflect any changes or conditions imposed by you tonight. There's a statement generally about the process for you in order to allow for reasonable expansion of existing structures and allow the flexibility in the application of design development standards applicable to the overlay. The DRC may grant reasonable deviations from the design standards if the site's topography, configuration, or other unique circumstances prevent full compliance with the requirements. In such cases, the committee may impose conditions that will accomplish the purpose of the requirements to the maximum extent possible. And really, that's why we're here tonight. So tonight before you is SP Real Estate Holdings LLC, operating as Honda is the business proposed. It's located in Centerville Village and Broad Street. It is directly on the border of Henrico and Goochland County. The scope of the application we will talk about tonight is that there are portions of their original CO application that they submitted to the county that were allowed to be approved administratively. That includes site lighting, signage, and base landscaping requirements. And modifications are required to the following. The first would be architecture, which is really the building character in the code, building materials, roof treatment, parking, fencing, and bay doors. And we'll go through each of the requests separately. Again, the location for this is Centerville. This is the border of Henrico County and Goochland County right here. You can see the property. This is the county's booster station. That's that little square in the center of the property. It is zone B1. Directly across the street is M1 property. And that actually, you have Tommy's Car Wash here and Valvoline right here. And you have Wawa located here. And this property around here, this is mostly wetlands or environmental features. This is generally West Creek area. So on the lower left, the applicant has been nice enough to provide us a good overview of where the location of the building is. As you can see, there is a commercial and residential mixed-use development over here on the Henrico side. The property itself is pretty restricted. There are certain features on the property that do affect its buildability. And the yellow box is the county booster station right here. There's also a floodplain and some topography that runs along this way. And there's also a major utility easement that actually serves both Goochland and Henrico County. This is generally the area that's important for our TCSD and transfer of utilities between the two localities. This is the layout plan. I have provided on here, just for your reference, sort of north, south, east, and west, because I may refer to the different directions. By the layout plan, by its length, instead of showing north-south, it's been rotated, so actually north is to the right-hand side of the screen, which makes it a lot easier. This is actually the layout that's proposed. Parking up front, this is the area that's a little bit of required buffer. Booster station is this area right here as a reference to floodplains. And you can see this is the utility easement that runs down through the property. This is the principal building. To include back here in the rear, there's a parking deck. The applicant can talk a little bit more. This is our administrative building, service area bay doors. I've also included in the packet the landscape plan. This is standard buffer here along the front, and other elements I'll talk about as we go through the presentation. So the first request is a modification to section 15447.81, which is really character, and it includes several different elements. Generally, it talks about what Centerville area looks like, which is really pitched roofs, limited height, porches, cupolas, columns, and smaller scaled windows. Anytime what they talk about and what should be provided in the plan, a building should incorporate those features. It should also have building materials and patterns that complement the area's character in terms of color, scale, and texture. And the building shall have a unified appearance, i.e. similar materials and or colors around the building itself. So for the modification to subsection B of that, which really talks about type of designs, cupolas, small windows. There are ordinance requirements as referenced here, and there is a character that's pretty much established in part of the village, especially in the western village areas. So top here is United Bank, which is generally about Mannequin Road. Back up, 1, 2. This is that Broad Mill Office Park, which is recently constructed. And this is office buildings that are located right in front of where Mannequin Town will be located, so it's the center of the village. And as you can see, there's our typical traditional village style, at least for Centerville and the courthouse, and a little bit more residential in character and design. So the applicant does propose elevations here. As noted, there is a large glass area in the front here. There's generally no or little windows here to the side. It's a flat roof without elements. So it's missing common form or characteristics with the Centerville traditional village. And so the design would need to be approved by the design review committee. If it's the pleasure of the chair, I'll continue on with all the requests and we'll move forward.
Yes, it is, Chairman.
So the next modification, which is all part of the original request for character, is to really look at building materials and character. As referenced before, you should have colors and the building should be, in building materials, patterns, and color should be generally consistent throughout the overlay. The overlay primarily has brick, stone, or cementitious sidings in the last of the material requirements of the code. Colors are most commonly earth tones of brick, red, tan, brown, or grays. Smaller material patterns are often either brick forms or simulated brick or siding with similar textures and forms. Material changes or architectural relief are often provided to break up building mass, which is consistent with 15447B2. So I'll give you some examples here. Some that we just showed. So here's the United building. Has some materials that are appropriate in colors, but also has some breakup in the mass. Here's the Residence Inn, which has the colors as we anticipated. It does have a flat roof, as does Chick-fil-A. There have been several flat roofs approved in the overlay. But the building mass has been broken up in its form or its mass. So again, the applicant facades are glass extended with blue or white, with gray to the rear on the parking deck area, which is some metal grid forms are used to try to shield some of the parking area, parking deck. There is large black block pattern design in the squares here for the sides, as you can see. Color patterns are inconsistent with the traditional Centerville Village colors, materials, and texture. And the form itself is inconsistent with other buildings in the overlay. And design and colors would need to be approved by the design review committee as well. Request 2 is modifications to the building materials permitted in the overlay. What I've taken here is the chart generally from the ordinance, which shows the materials that are allowed. Brick, stone, IPIS, cementitious sidings, which we saw in most of the examples that we've seen. The applicant does propose concrete panels, principally glass on the front of the building. Glass is only permitted as an accent. Metal panels, perforated metal panels, as I mentioned, back on the back part of the parking deck, and sprayed concrete veneer in a portion. The trim is generally metal panels. There's also some metal panels that are used in some small areas of the building facade itself. And there's flat roof with liner and concrete, of course, on the parking deck. So generally, most of the materials that are provided by the applicant are inconsistent with the overlay.
Mr. Cash, on the metal panels you talked about for the trim, are those blue sections? Is that a metal?
Right, that's blue, it's metal, but that's right, correct.
You also said that back by the parking garage, there was a section that looked like a mosaic, Jenny, that it wasn't in color, but that is also metal?
Right, so these are perforated metal panels, and so that's provided on the parking deck here. It's generally like a grayish brown color, and the intent of that is to help screen the parking deck from the Henrico side.
Thank you. What is the material on the overhang in front of the blue metal on the roof?
So this here, I believe that's metal as well.
Yeah, it's a white metal panel and the blue right behind that.
The blue metal.
And part
is
of
a
the
trim.
body of the showroom going further to the left on that is also white metal panel, and then it transitions from
There back to.
metal panel to precast. It's painted white to match.
Okay, so the larger ones back as we start going back are the precast concrete.
Right behind the stair tower from that point back, it's the precast
Okay.
concrete panels.
I think I'm hearing that it's metal onto the stair tower with a white finish.
Is it that metal back in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then it turns into precast concrete.
And what is the color of the precast concrete?
It's a white.
Okay. Not a beige or off-white, it's a white.
It's white.
again, so, as we just discussed, I was more than point them out, but I'm glad we did that together to make it work.
You got it right.
But yeah, they clarified exactly where I anticipated some of the metal panels to be. Again, this is something that would have to be approved by you. Request 3 is modification to 15447A4, and this is really the roof treatment. As noted in my staff report, the ordinance is a little bit inconsistent about roof treatment. In one place it tells you thou shalt not, and in another part it says, well, you know, where it's discouraged and where it's practical not to have so. If you do use it, parapet walls should be considered discrete rooftop equipment. As we were coming forward with this application, it's something that is a little contradictory within the ordinance. Felt it appropriate that the committee could also consider that. It does reference, again, screened rooftop equipment. For this, the applicant has shown here, there's a parapet wall that will go up and screen the rooftop equipment. As we have not had one before, the only thing that is inconsistent is exactly how our cars treated on a rooftop type scale. As noted, they have screened it on the Henrico side to the east, but to the west, I believe it's just some type of wire and type of contraption there, so there's no screening for that. Again, as we're discussing this, that would have to be granted modification through you. There are examples of approved flat roofs within the overlay, as I referenced. There's the McDonald's, and typically with a lot of the overlay provisions where we have flat roofs, we have some sort of cornice, other type of features. And this is the Residence Inn up here. This is the roof of McDonald's, and the Taco Bell, they're located in Broadview Shopping Center. This is the Audi building here. They do have a flat roof, and theirs is here. So again, it has been a common type of element within the overlay that has been approved. Modification request 4 relates to parking. The intent of the overlay is to really break up the mass of parking, especially how it relates to the street. So there are a couple different ways that that can occur. You should have no more than double row of parking along the street frontage, in this case Broad Street Road. Distribute parking areas on all sides, front, rear side of the building, or utilize a low impact development practice within the parking areas to address should be environmental features.
What examples of low impact development practices have we?
Actually, there have not been any of those that have sought exception through utilizing that in the overlay. There are examples
One in
out there.
Advance Auto.
The what?
The Advance Auto has the kind of enhanced landscape around it. That's LID.
That it wasn't done to seek exception to the parking design, but we do have the green gardens or the low impact design there. So typically with that, it could be something like pervious pavers, could be some type of block that's used. Basically, the idea is that there's some sort of filtration to the parking. Exactly how that would address sort of the concern about separation or shallow parking rather than the sea of parking. It doesn't seem to match up, but that is an opportunity. So the applicant hasn't proposed to meet it through those standards. They have done an attempt to try to satisfy that by moving the parking around. So for this, being an awkward site here, the applicant has proposed the green area up here is the area that exceeds double row of parking permitted. They did proffer a limitation in the zoning case to limit the first 100 feet, which is great, just generally along this line here, to be used for customer parking rather than inventory or show or display. The red area, the board did approve the applicants, also shown here as well, to have some 6 spaces that would be used for really display opportunities or bring the vehicle up so customers can see it, things like that. They did additionally have additional 6 spaces that are located generally in front here. You can see the 2 cars there that will go across. The applicant doesn't provide parking to the east. This area is really a necessary access around the building here. With the site, it's very tight and constrained. That area also is needed for fire access to get around the building. The applicant has provided the 3-level parking deck, and that's primarily will serve as inventory storage for them. So, not typical for an auto dealership where there is anticipated lots of open spaces or lots of parking area with display of vehicles. They instead, due to the constraints, have used the parking deck. In conversation with the applicant, we have discussed the concern about the parking here. We have asked them to offer higher growing shrubs than what's there. The current landscape plan calls for Carissa hollies, which are pretty short growing and long growing. We've asked for other opportunities, and I believe the applicants will be working on just a landscape position for that. Something that grows taller. It's about 3 to 4 feet could be maintained at that height. As mentioned, the site is very constrained. Parking to the east is limited, and the parking deck addresses the lack of site parking for the use. So again, we'd be asking the committee to approve the modification or condition the approval. Parking examples in the overlay. This has been something that's pretty typical in the overlay, that parking has not been provided at greater than a double row, especially since the design, the updated standards that came in several years ago. The residence end up in the upper left-hand corner, as you can see, their parking is one up against the ramp and roadway. This right here that comes down across that is actually another parcel that's in front of them. Again, the McDonald's and Taco Bell on the lower left, Audi up in the front, which removed their parking, and that was part of the negotiation for their site design to have no parking in front of the building, so located down the sides here. Next modification is to fencing. So the modification here is needed because there's no chain link or wooden privacy fence. That fencing is allowed in the overlay. Fencing has to be constructed durable, low maintenance materials. Typically what we've seen is some sort of composite fencing or vinyl fencing that we've approved in just different situations. This area right here, the fencing that's proposed is to be generally around the area of the booster station. I'll show you in a second. And the applicant proposes to use chain link, black vinyl coated fencing. And they provide also a row of 6-foot minimum height evergreens along the non-gate areas for the booster station.
Does it show where the gate would be?
So the gate will be up here generally where this red arrow is, up here on the top. As you can see, our existing access is there, the county's, and it's being incorporated as part of the applicant's access. They'll be working together on that to maintain access. And what they proposed is to do some 6-foot evergreen trees that would go along this perimeter here. That would be the intent to both hide the booster station and to also soften the impact of the fence and the booster station. We had asked, the county is actually, and the applicant, we're both interested in the fence around the booster station so that we prevent access in there for safety and security. For the applicant and for staff perspective, the evergreens also serve the screen that view of the booster station from people coming onto the property.
I may have missed it, but I couldn't read the little tiny pictures.
Huh?
But how high is the fence intended to be?
I don't recall. I think it's at 8 feet. 8-foot fence there, and then of course the gate area that we need to get into the booster station. So at the time of planning, the fence was supposed to be 6 feet long. And then finally, the 6th request is related to storage and equipment. Interestingly, the ordinance refers to this area of storage and equipment, but really talks about in section B is bay doors and loading areas. The bay doors have to be oriented so the doors do not face Broad Street Road. They can be accessed from the structure's side or rear. The applicant's proposal has 3 bay doors facing Broad Street Road. Recent approvals for exception require landscaping in addition to some stone walls that have been approved in recent years. Here again is the display. So you can see that the building has a slightly angled orientation towards Broad Street. The bay doors are in this inset part of the elevation, and here shown right there. But you can see the perspective that will be present from Broad Street Road. And let's see, there we go. So we have had examples in recent years. So the first one is one that's in compliance, and that's the Audi dealership, where it's moved to the side. The bay orientation is limited from Broad Street Road, not from other roads. And the Valvoline across the street was approved with a series of low walls that were intended from different angles to block the visibility into the site. And additionally, landscaping. And notice in the recent picture I took out there, it's missing some of that landscape. So again, that's the presentation for this. There are 6 different requests that would need to be considered. And of course, staff's ready to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. Actually, how would you like to take these? Want to take these in order?
Yeah, let's do that.
And the applicant does have a presentation. So
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that. So before that, I have a question about the lighting plan. I assume it's a photometric, but it's a bit hard to read. You or the applicant have a photometric that is something we can put on the screen and read a little?
I might be able to. Let me see.
Okay.
Those are hard to read under the best of
They are,
circumstances, and it
yeah.
makes it even
Yeah.
smaller when you have such a small copy as that. Okay.
Thank you.
Makes it all clear, right?
Well-
I can always zoom in on a portion if you're interested.
Why don't we start at the 12 o'clock position on Broad Street, so the northernmost center midpoint, and go clockwise.
There we go.
That's easier to open after that.
But, all right, let's start. Where would you like to start?
Just kind of the midpoint of the frontage on Broad Street Road. Perfect. So I'm seeing 13s in the parking area, 1.1, 2.7, 1.1 at the street, 0.01.
Yeah. So generally, at the property
Generally
line,
zero
it goes
street.
past the point.
Mhm, that's right.
Can't be past half foot handle at the property.
And then I'd like to come to the, when we're ready, to the northeast corner, and kind of go around the
Yeah.
eastern property
Yeah.
line. So just kind of come down towards the northeast corner, please. It's a big use.
So that's 0.3. And I believe by the topography, this part of the where the lights are located, they're slightly below the topography. There's a retaining wall on the side of the property.
And the lights along that are at a lower level too, to not bring any light infiltration across the property line.
Mhm.
Okay. So then the lights that are shown here are on the open deck,
That's correct.
and they are cut off in a way that it looks like they're not spilling over much beyond
Correct.
the
false-
facade of the building.
That's correct. We adjusted the height of those to make sure that that doesn't happen.
What is the height generally?
So generally in the middle of the Gs, they're about, I can tell you exactly, I think it's about 8 feet, if I remember right.
Oh, okay.
And then as they progress to the west, naturally they get a little taller. Yeah, Gs are 8 feet in height.
Okay.
G1s are 10 feet.
Okay.
So as you move further away from the property line, they gain a little bit in height.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the west now. Okay. We're back to the,
Which way we go?
just back to the street.
When you can get those numbers.
Do you, if you want to get closer, you can.
Imagine drawing that on paper.
Okay. Do you want to get closer anywhere?
No, that's okay, that's okay.
Ms. Cash, do you have any comments on the photometrics?
No, we're good. Well, of course, we'll reassess all these kind of plan development, as well as the building mounted ones for that, to make sure they work.
And so it's apparent, and it sounds like there are two lighting pole heights on the deck, 8 feet 10 foot.
Mhm. Yeah. So for us originally, actually, we had approved everything except the deck parking from before, and I didn't realize they'd been added the second time when I had, we looked at it together. But that would be compliant to doing what we wanted to do. There was concern about light cast towards Henrico.
Sure.
But those are the type building that would, lighting that would be approved in this area.
And on the east side, by where the townhomes are, there's lighting on the side of the building, right?
Correct.
Right, but it's
Well,
generally,
there's that, there's still downlight down the angle down, I guess they're on the side.
and they're generally lower than.
And they're on all night?
The way
They'll
the,
be on a timer.
right. So for the lighting, you're supposed to bring it down at certain times.
Yeah, so I think they're mounted at 17.5 feet. Keep in mind, we're about 6 feet below next door as well. And we have a 6-foot fence on top of a retaining wall. So generally we'd be at a low level.
Right. This is a security light. It's on a timer, which I assume is at night, and so it'll run 10 to 6 or something like that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That was the hardest thing in the site plan for me to follow. It was very hard to read. I tried to zoom in on the material I had, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, it is, and the way
Glasses
to
and a
do it.
magnifying glass. that's
Right,
what it is.
yeah, I have to look at it this way as well to be able to read those numbers. They're always hard to read. As you know, one of the concerns that came up, I believe during the planning commission process, was concern about lighting on the deck. So I appreciate the applicant making efforts to address that early on.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cash. Now is the appropriate time for applicant presentation, yes?
Yes.
Okay. When you're ready.
So, Ray, do you mind?
No, I'll bring you over the, it works just like.
So let me begin by making an introduction. So my name's Mike Rothermel. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Spotsman, representing the applicant. Our client, Joey Wong, is not able to be here tonight. Joey's made many trips down here, has met with everybody, and we need to express his regret. He had a previous commitment this week when this meeting was set, so he's sorry he wasn't able to be here. Bill Kimple is with Rainier Construction. He's the project manager. Bill has an extensive background in building automobile dealerships, both with this client and other clients. Dave Colby is with Archall Architects. Dave similarly has lots of experience with automobile dealerships, Honda, Audi, others as well. So I've been fortunate that we've got a really good, strong team. that our client has put together here, and I know we're going to dig into the weeds on some of this stuff. These guys are really good at explaining everything. And what I wanted to do was just give a little bit of a background. I don't know if the two members of the committee followed the zoning case or followed this particular matter, but I think it's important to understand sort of the background and put some of this in context. We're not coming in here just asking for exceptions because we don't want to meet the standards. And so what I'm going to do is just give a quick background on some of the things we've been working on this case for about a year. In fact, it's over a year. Yeah, we came in September of 22 and met with Jamie and Ray to lay out some of the issues and talk about the site and get their feedback. And so what we've presented as part of the certificate of approval application is really the product that was put together after receiving a lot of input from different stakeholders, from county staff. We met with each member of the Board of Supervisors separately to go through not just conceptually the thought, but we showed them our architecturals. And we appreciated, Jamie and Ray, did a good job of very early on telling us, hey, this site's tough. We approved a use here 8 years ago for a memory care facility, and it never developed because the site is really challenging. So we've been working on this for a while, and so I just wanted to give just a little bit of context. And these are the same diagrams that Ray used, but with respect to where this property is located, I think it's important to note. So we are actually not just east of Route 288, we're actually east of Tuckahoe Creek here. So we're one of the only properties that's really east of Tuckahoe Creek between the creek and the county line. So when we first came in to talk about a Honda dealership, there were some other property owners, sellers that had approached our client west of 288 offering some land. And candidly, it would have been much easier to build on some of those sites. But the county was very specific right from the get-go. We don't want an automobile dealership west of 288. That's really, that's Centerville proper. That's, we view that differently, and we want to protect that area. So this site's one of the, obviously the few sites remaining east of 288. So we focused on this site. This just sort of shows the other uses around us. Right across the street, so the star sort of shows where the Honda dealership, is proposed for. Right across the street and up just a little bit, we have the Valvoline and Tommy's Car Wash, Wawa, Chick-fil-A, Audi. Some of the exceptions that we're asking for tonight have been granted to others. We feel, if you look at the users east of 288, there's a lot of national, regional type of users that have their prototype, structures, buildings, and we have, some photos of some of those buildings if we need to get to that. But if you look at Audi and you look at Tommy's Car Wash and Valvoline, the sort of national corporate of those entities, like Honda, has certain requirements. So we have some flexibility with what we can do, but there are certain requirements that we need to meet. And we think what we're presenting here fits really well with what is east of 288. Obviously, we're not proposing this sort of out in Mannequin proper, but we think this is a good use for this site. So I just wanted to highlight, and Ray did this, but we created a diagram that shows in more color the restrictions here. So shown in orange is the county's pump station, and I guess, is that a BMP back there?
Yeah.
Existing stormwater facility. And then really what makes this, and we got sort of floodplain and unusable space back here. What makes this site the most difficult, though, is this Henrico County sewer easement that runs right through the middle of the property. And so obviously we can't locate any part of the building, any permanent improvement within that easement. And that's an easement that's owned by Henrico. It's one of their sanitary sewer trunk lines. that runs through the property. And obviously that restricts what we can do, how we can move the building around, where the parking can go. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that. I'm just going to zip through a couple of these. This is the layout plan, just showing the different parts of the building. So then we're getting into the architecturals, and I know we're happy to talk about these, however the committee would like to, if you want to go through each of the 6 items that Ray has listed individually, but I'll just do a quick run through. So we have put together elevations that, again, were the result of input from various folks. County staff, we talked to the supervisors, we also had to talk to West Creek, get their input on this. And so what we tried to do was put something together that was uniform, and but also provide some architectural styling. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because Dave will probably say I'm butchering the presentation. He's the architect. He's going to talk about these things. But so we've put together elevations though for each side of the building that we're happy to walk through and discuss. So this is just an overview. Showing where we are in relation to the adjacent property. One thing I just want to note with regard to the Stanley Martin townhomes next to us. So now, Gateway Square, which I believe is the name of that, is sort of consistent with some of the other Henrico urban mixed use. If you think of Green Gate or you think of West Broad Village, it's got high-rise residential really nestled in amongst other commercial and non-residential uses. So you've got residences here and in the back, and then you have a front that is non-residential. I think maybe the original site plan or concept plan showed some commercial. I think some of that is now medical office, but it's non-residential. And so the other thing I wanted to sort of note from this is there was a lot of, we haven't heard from any individuals expressing concern, that we're understanding that Henrico County has sent a letter in. This property and this drive aisle, and the reduced buffer was something that the Board of Supervisors had accepted back in 2015 when the memory care facility came in, because the way the site is laid out, you have to put the structure in this area, and you need circulation around it. And so that has been in place since 2015, and we had to come in and request for a proffer amendment and CUP because an automobile dealership is a conditional use under B1. And so the property had been zoned B1. We needed a proffer amendment to add an automobile dealership. The other thing I wanted to note in this diagram, so the front set of townhomes face north and south. So you have, I guess, 2 units, 1 unit on each set of buildings, 1 unit here and 1 unit here, that have a couple windows facing to the west. The units that are in the rear of the property, the majority of those, we believe, sort of set back behind where the parking structure will be, and a lot of these units will actually look into undisturbed area back here. So while there is some visibility, of the parking structure, there's also a lot of visibility of all the commercial uses along Broad Street as well. So I just wanted to note that. This was a rendering that Archall had put together, showing this looking from the
Northeast, right?
northeast,
Looking
southeast, right?
Looking to the,
Are you raised?
Yeah, that's right, looking to the northwest.
I mean, your compass, yeah, looking from the southeast.
Looking to the northwest.
Right, and so you'll see, obviously, here's the parking structure, the county's pump station back here. One thing, and we'll get to this when we talk about the fencing, I think the applicant is willing to put up vinyl fencing if that's what the review committee, wants to do. We propose chain link from the standpoint of security. We talked to public utilities. They expressed, concern about security for this site. So we actually thought a chain link vinyl coated, so it would be a black fence, is stronger from a security standpoint, and we're obviously, you know, proposing to screen that with landscaping and with evergreen shrubs. But the gate, and Bill can talk about this, we just thought that was a better alternative to use. I'll just run through these quickly here. So this is from the northeast, sort of looking, just a rendering. This next one here, so this was a year-long process for the getting through zoning. And some of the renderings that we had, you know, put together at the very early onset of this application, talking about the zoning application, were just sort of to show the building. They didn't incorporate the topography, the existing topography, some of the existing conditions. So this shows that there will be some natural buffering, you know, and screening that occurs simply due to the elevation change in the topography of the site. And so this property is sort of raised from Broad Street, so there'll be a little bit of an uphill here, almost, you know, sort of a berm type effect. So we think that's important when it comes to what view are you going to have of the parking areas, what view are you going to have of the bay doors. So here's just a sort of another view from street level. We've included, you know, just some signage. I don't think we're reviewing that tonight, but we've worked with staff. I think we had proposed some signage that they didn't like initially. And so we went back and revised that and put something that David accepted and is consistent with the overlay requirements. So just an example of that. Dave has brought a board with him, and we'll walk through some of these specific you know, proposals as far as the architectural materials, the colors involved. You know, if you have questions about those, why he used those, Dave can talk about that. We can talk about landscaping. Bill will be the one. We've tried to enhance. We've done some things over and above what the county requires. We're certainly happy to talk about if there's a desire to swap out certain types of shrubs. You know, happy to discuss those. We've tried to put together a pretty robust landscape plan, and then, you know, these just sort of get into the weeds. We looked at the lighting. I don't think lighting is technically part of this review tonight, but we're happy to discuss it. So, you know, we think that, you know, we think we've put together a proposal that meets the area that we're locating in. We are, you know, absolutely ready to dig in on these things. You know, we thought there were a couple of ones that we could address pretty quickly, like the bay doors and the fencing, but we're happy to you know, tackle them however the two of you would like to.
So I have a couple clarifying questions that we made too. I'm looking at landscape plan, it's sheet 29, but I think it's also sheet 31, I guess, but 29 is, I can see some, you know, pretty substantial grading to the west side, right?
Correct.
And I see the grading to the northwest corner. I'm having I was wondering if you all could, maybe you, Bill, could describe between the two entrances or the two access points, describe the amount of grading that is expected with the natural berming that's there or the berming that's in place. How would you describe the amount of earth moving that's going on? I don't see a lot of grading lines on this landscape plan in that area.
Well, generally, we're going to be coming up and into the site off of Broad Street, coming in that west entrance. So there will be some grading overall. I think we're trying to maintain, I think the grading at that point is like a 167. I think there's a grading plan actually.
I did not see a
About a
grading
grading plan
plan.
in the COA submittal.
Do you have a grading plan?
That's the lines
They do have some, I guess, levels.
Yeah, so generally, you know, you're about at 167 or so coming into the grade. As you're coming up to the dealership, you're getting to about 182 in this area. And then you're generally coming back down, and I believe it's about 177 or so in this. You can zoom in, I'm not sure if you can, Ray. There are some grade lines that you can start to see
I'd have to leave the
That's
presentation.
okay.
We can go, I mean, I can pull up the other
That's
one.
fine, along here, that show.
But what I'm seeing, if I can,
We're trying
Here.
to create, we're trying to keep a lot of this natural grade and be as
Right.
natural as we can coming into this, and really leveling off our site. So what that's gonna do is we're gonna have some retaining walls in the building
Right.
on this backside, and trying to create a positive drainage as we bring our storm sewer from north to south down to
Okay.
the spreader.
Thank you.
So yeah, you can start to see there, you got 182, jump down to 179, 178 at street level here. And if you can pan to the top of the page, right?
so what I'm seeing is that grading, as you're talking about, around the west entrance and the east exit,
Yeah.
and not a lot of grading between those points. I mean, it's to work back to grading.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're establishing a
Not
grade.
on the site area.
Yeah, we're
but on the
establishing a
road.
grade for the site and making sure it works, working out of the site.
So is it correct that most of the grade at the road frontage will remain outside of those entrance areas? And that's what it looks like.
Yes.
Okay.
Quickly note also, this is the primary utility,
It's a vault.
vault right here,
Which we're not disturbed.
which is interesting because there is supposed to be a potential
Yeah.
lane reconfiguration there.
So we are widening this entrance
Right.
and putting this turn lane in. That road actually decells back into this lane. We're gonna continue that to create our turn lane in. And so we're generally widening this area
Right.
coming in and then maintaining it after we get past the entrance parking back to the pump house.
Okay. Is this a balance site or are you bringing in dirt, taking out dirt?
No, I haven't done a full grading on it, honestly. I mean, they've done the grading, but I haven't looked at the grading plan to that level at this point.
So the reason I ask is if you have the opportunity to create additional berming on top of the berm, is that something that could be done within your grading?
Possibly, we can look at that. There's a possibility of it. I mean, we get pretty steep.
Yep.
We get pretty, you can tell the grade lines kind of drawing close together, so we get a little steep right there.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask that. And then on the entrance, it's 3 bays, correct, into the service reception area?
Yes.
And is that a through bay passage or do those cars back out?
It'll be, generally, it's intended to be a through bay into the service. Right, so they'll come in and generally come into service here, or they can come out
So-
here.
Okay, so the
But-
one lane can transit through and the others transit in.
That's correct. That lane transits through, these two transit in, that's correct.
That area right there also is, I mean, it's the service drive, so that's where customers drive their car in the building, you're greeted, it's really a continuation of the showroom. You've been a service drive dealership, they're pretty common. So that space is not a garage function where there's tools, lifts, any of that stuff is going on.
Where you're greeted and received.
Yeah, it's a nice space, right? It's got, I think, tile floors and ceilings and lights, and generally speaking, it's approximately, because our 100-foot setbacks, actually 120 feet setback here, is generally sitting about 160, 180 feet back from the roadway,
I'm sorry, what is the 120-foot setback?
right here.
It's a 100-foot setback, but they tell the 120, is that?
Well, that right there is 100-foot setback, that dash line that sort of proceeds up there. So the
Yeah.
building, I think, part of it's,
So that's the 100-foot setback, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, but VDOT has identified a possible expansion of Broad Street in the future. So we have accommodated that already. We don't know if that's going to happen, but if it does, we will meet the setback when it occurs. That's why we've pushed it back forward.
Yeah, we felt at least the building needed a setback at this point in the event, if that becomes a reality in the future, the building's already back to the appropriate footage.
yeah. So they've incorporated the right of way, we anticipate.
So thank you. So those are the clarifying questions I wanted to ask.
So on the east side, right now, there's a whole bunch of trees there, which clearly you're not gonna be there, right? I mean, unless they're on the Ryan property. So
That is
there's
correct.
not gonna be any buffering there in terms of view.
Correct, we'll have a retaining wall that tapers from 9 foot at the northern end down to about 3 or 4 foot at the southern end. It varies a little bit through there. It'll be a concrete retaining wall, and it'll have a 6 foot, we're proposing a 6 foot vinyl privacy fence on top of that to create some additional height. But once we get beyond the southern half of the building, where the wetlands is at, all of that further to the south will remain. All the trees will remain. And then you can see we're starting to try to plant some trees where we can along this backside over here. Just,
And I believe the proffer says that possible, something similar to if possible, we'll have additional landscaping on the, where the fence is. It's a very tight area. The, I think in one of the reference from Henrico was regarding the 5 foot setback, and 5 foot ability for plantings is kind of limited, but that's what he did proffer the vinyl fence above the higher edge of the retaining wall.
Character?
Yes.
Would you like me to return to the request? Anything would be helpful for you to look at?
Probably the presentation bullet points, if you don't mind, would be helpful. For the character.
And would you like to discuss each one? I can go back to each heading or just where we are.
Yeah, for each heading, if you will, so just number one, question number one. Thank you. All right. Get to tag team on this, and clearly we're not rehearsed, so we get to go ahead. You want to start? Or you start?
You start.
Okay. So I think on the next nearest car dealership we have, which is the Audi, people would generally consider that to be an architectural success. It set a lot of the, not only the tone for consistency in the area, but also created some new elements, including the stone wall features that we see down the road that allow some of those other buildings to come in. By my calculation, the rough amount of glass treatment on the Audi dealership is about 40%, maybe as much as 50% of that facade. Here, we have 100% of a facade. That's obviously quite different. So we talked about things that might be easy gives or conversations. And I would be interested in approaching glass not being the predominant material. The predominant, of course, is 51%. So in response to that.
I had concerns about that too. So like on the facade of this building, I think there's like 5 huge areas of glass. So, basically the whole front is glass. And then I'm not sure what the drive-in bays are. I'd like to see what that looks like too. Whereas the Audi, I think, had 3 maybe at the front, and then it wraps around the side. But the entire front is not glass. And it just doesn't seem as big in terms of width with all the glass on the front.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that, if I were to characterize the style, would be this is more industrial style, certainly commercial, but more industrial style windows. The Audi is pretty uncommon. It's not unique necessarily, but the wrap over the window, building wall material is interesting. That's part of what breaks up that expansive glass, is that the glass doesn't rise all the way to the cornice line.
And there's no parking in front of their building. If you look at it, you see green space and shrubs, which is kind of nice. It makes a difference in the overall appeal of it. I know car dealers like what they like to have their standard look. So,
One of the things to consider is the front of our building has a very large cantilever awning over it, this blue element that's coming over, which creates some level of cover. walk underneath of it. When looking at the code and trying to find some similarities of what we're doing to what is in the zoning text, there's some talk about covered areas, canopies, and things like that. I think I read somewhere in the code. So it's not exactly like the porches and the cupolas. I know it's not the same level of scale of what that stuff is, but there is some depth that is being achieved with this design of the building. Another thing about that is on the front side of that, so you have the blue, I don't know if you can see the picture of the exterior. So there's the blue accent material, and then in front of that there are louvers beyond that. There's 3 or 4 of those white bands that project even further out, which give even more cover over that area. When you look at all of the elevations in total, I mean, there's not, I understand your point about the 50% of the elevation, but obviously there's other areas of the building that would balance out as well. Just the side, the east side, the service drive has a bit more solid wall in it as well. I mean, one of the things, from stepping back, just entirely on this project, this type of design is really kind of above and beyond what is a normal car dealership. We do a ton of car dealerships. We've been doing car dealerships in our office before there were even prototypes. So it's been like 30 years of what we've been doing. It's a weird niche market that we're in. And the fact that this building has a 2-story showroom, that's a unique feature that not all car dealerships have. 3-bay service reception, there's a lot of service reception, which is speaking to the service and what they do for the community. Above the service drive, there's actually a lounge up there, so there's a canopied area, so you can go outside and actually occupy the roof on top of that service drive, which again is kind of a unique feature that you don't really see very often. And then the parking structure behind it is, I mean, that's, of all of the dealerships that we've done in the past, I mean, when you get a parking structure involved, it's very, very rare. I'd say that's probably 1 out of 100 have some kind of a parking structure element that's built into it. So I say all that mainly because just the scale of the project and the commitment that Joey has to this area this is a big deal, and this is a really big commitment to the community.
Yeah, and Ray, are you able to pull up our presentation back there? Because I do want to just address the Audi dealership. And so Dave put this together. So the various Audi dealerships here, so I think the one in the top right is Richmond. And you'll sort of see, I mean, they have a certain look to them. And every manufacturer is the same, right? So they have certain looks that they want to maintain, especially with new dealerships. Honda's the same way. So we have a little bit of flexibility with some of the architecturals, but I mean, we can't, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't make the Honda dealership look like an Audi dealership as far as the design. The other thing I want to just say about the parking deck, which I didn't cover, in my initial presentation. So that, and Bill could correct me if I'm wrong in this, but that's probably an $8 to $10 million item, and that is not something, our client would choose to do if he didn't have to. But in talking with folks, especially thinking about some of the meetings we've had with various folks, that's been received as a positive. That's been received as, hey, we don't have a sea of cars. I mean, that's great. Make the parking deck look as good as you can, but we actually prefer that. We like that. So we've tried to keep all this consistent. We've tried to use various materials, glass, and when we get into, because some of these categories that Ray's outlined overlap, right? The character and the building materials, and some of the things that are allowable by right as far as building materials like the ephes and the cementitious siding. We actually think what we're putting forward is actually better than what can be done by right in some respects, and Dave can talk about, what they, put into as far as the design of what the paneling and the precast is going to be, and there's the ability to make some variations to that. But with regard to the facade, the front facade, I don't know that we have a lot of room to, just from a corporate, brand standpoint.
And I think, one of the things that's in the code is that we're trying to find something that complements the area, right? And we're talking about the Audi store in this particular case. When I were looking at the design of that Audi store, that is a lot of glass on the front facade. And to me, from a balance perspective, it's felt like we're in the same ballpark with what is going on with that particular building, kind of what we're doing.
I respect it, but I would say, as I did, just numerically, I believe the Audi is about 60% non-glazed and 40% glazed, and this is 100% glazed. So that's twice as much at least, okay, and probably more than that. I think.
Yeah, because they've got all the, whatever the other material is on the left and across the top of it, which is actually a significant portion of it, whereas this one is all glass all across the front. And it's more panels, more sections. I don't know what the difference is in terms of total length, but it's a lot of glass all in one big plane. And that concerns me.
So when we looked at Natalie and Tommy's and staff was working with them, the approach was taken to mitigate the street level view. And part of that was done with the mitigation of the berm and the elevation was there. And part of that was done with introducing the seating walls and landscaping. And so it was a separation. You can still see above them, around them, and through them to some degree, but I think here, again, we're not taking kind of a Firehouse Tommy's brick building. We're talking about a completely glass front. And so my interest would be reducing the glass. This is Centerville and not a corporate prototypical location. And I would be interested in what movement would be made there and also what would be done at the street level and at the edge of the top of the berm to obscure some view of the front of the building.
Yeah.
Again, realizing that you have a double height ceiling, so I mean, you're going to see.
Second floor there.
Right, you're going to see a lot of that anyway, just not at the pedestrian scale and the driver scale. So that would be the first kind of character treatment that I would have is.
Yeah, I have the same concern with that. And you combine that with the fact that there's the parking in the front, which limits how much you can buffer the view. And then you've got the bays also at the front, which I know some of the other buildings do. But for like Valvoline and Car Wash, I mean, their business is getting cars through their business into the building. It's their primary purpose. So that's kind of oranges and apples, if you will. Whereas the bays and the car dealership, I mean, that's not the main thing.
I'd say it's equally service as it is selling the vehicles.
Well, I know it's
for the
important because that's where they make their money,
Yeah.
is doing the service.
Yeah, and I think the topography marries well with how far we're set back in the elevations that we're above street level and the trees and the landscape we're going to put in front with I think we made a suggestion with Buford Hollies. Is that right? The Buford doors.
Perfect.
And which, we have set in there as a minimum of 3 foot tall, along with some 6 and 8 foot trees in front of that will help buffer and shade some of that view away.
I like that the bays are at least set back. That's a good step. I think it's kind of the combination of the massive glass front and the bays and the parking.
I think there's probably, now that I'm looking at it, your comments here, there's probably a way to accommodate that I think we can still work with. So even on this image, if we were to take this blue line or this blue line and pull it down, I don't know what the right dimension is, but it pulls it down, maybe it's pulling it down to even this line right here, so that you have a bit more of a forehead of the building, a little bit more wall, so to speak, and lower the height of the glass. We can play with that. That would be the move. That would be the way we would attack that, is lowering that blue to an appropriate level and then having a
So
solid
you have
wall.
some other facade there that, above the glass.
Yeah, I think what would happen is right where the back of that blue is right there, that would begin a wall, basically like what this is right here. So this wall would wrap around the front of the building, you would lower the blue down underneath of that. There's probably a little bit of a play that we can massage that a little bit to see if that would reduce it. And maybe even on the sidewalls where the glass is returning, looking at reducing that as well. But I think the key thing of the look is the openness and that element, that accent blue element, and having transparency and openness in the showroom from below that line.
Well, I know that's your goal.
Well, I know, obviously that's what it's doing, but I think the
But
point.
that kind of conflicts with what we're after, which is the character.
Would you mind if I, is it okay if I ask a quick question to the applicant? Well, I would know, because one of the, looking back at the alley improvement, part of that was to try to, the reason it's shaped and sort of drafted was to limit the glass material on the side, but also to make sure they caught that it references the shroom or whatever it is, that alley is particular for that. Is there some additional type of element that would be important to potentially for your client that would minimize the glass but still kind of get the presence that they're looking for? So I didn't know. That case did have specific percentages about different materials and use in parts of the building, which is because it started off with glass as well.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there's an element that maybe does interest you.
I mean, the glass is broken up with this, that's the spray applied concrete, so it's difficult to see. But there are some columns in there that break that up. So there's these about 5 or 6 vertical, darker elements that break the glass up. I mean, it's possible we could look at maybe widening those a bit, because those act as almost columns. And the way that rendering's looking from here, I can see what you're talking about. It feels like it's just all glass all the way across. It's really not. It is broken up. So I think we could clarify that a bit more. But
Are
those
you describing it as a dark black? What color are you describing?
It's this thing right here. So it's like
It's like a dark gray.
It's a dark gray.
It's a dark gray.
accent material. Yeah.
Dark earth tone.
The glass mullions are going to be a black mullion as well. So it's like a thicker element in there. And what I'm talking about are these pieces right through here, all the way down.
Yeah, some of those stuff, it's not enough to be comfortable with the amount of glass on the front. Does it have to be that wide?
What's that?
Right, it's, well, I mean, I'm just looking at how wide the building is and how small the space appears to be around it, particularly on the east side. Oh, thank goodness I don't live in those townhomes. You know, because there's no buffer there, I'm just like, I mean, I don't know how big the showroom is, and does it have to be that big? Does it have to be that much glass on the front?
We're restricted, I know that one of our drawings are the floor plans, we can show you what the plan looks like, but one of the requirements from Honda is to have a certain amount of capacity in the showroom. So there's, I believe it's 5 or 6 cars that are lined up inside the showroom that face directly out. That's a minimum that they are required to have. So that dimension kind of drives how wide the building can be. So I don't think the width would change in anything that we're looking at doing. I do feel like there's some massaging to this, and I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough right now to paint a picture for you guys.
No, I think we get what you're saying. I mean, I think what we're saying is it needs some facade.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying, we're willing
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Yeah, if you draw that down, and I know it's about a 10-foot band, have to measure it out, but widen those separation columns a little bit to really bring some of the density of the glass out. There might be something that we can do there.
I think there needs to be a significant percentage decrease in the amount of glass on the front.
If you were to take something somewhat like a rain screen, but then louver, even if it's sort of like implied louver, instead of being a flat projector or projection out, if it were, as you said, kind of the head or the forehead down, I think if you began to make that a turn down, then that begins to obscure some of that. And that's, again, in Audi, if you look at it from the other end, you see, you look at the glass end, Mike, no respect, but if you take it from the other end, you see more wall. And I think that if this is returned, you get a little more coverage of the glass area. You still have glass, and you still have a louver that allows the passage of light to go into the showroom area, but there, whether the fins are this kind of orientation or more flat, you do get some coverage. And again, you kind of take a rain screen approach of some kind of a wall. It's not a wall in front of your glass. I would be interested in seeing that to begin to achieve this idea of retaining some glass as opposed to beefing up the thickness of those intermediate columns. But that begins to make the glass recede visually to not being the predominant material. It may still be the predominant material, or very close to 51%, but it takes it down visually. Even Tommy's car wash, which is a lot of glass, even plexiglass, also has a lot of other elements. It's not a full glass wall in the frontage. So that would be my ask to you, to bring back some alternatives. I wouldn't say just one, but some alternatives that show a reduction in the glazing to materials that are otherwise allowed in the district.
Okay. Any other concerns about
That, please.
character?
Yeah, can you go back to your bullet points, please? The ones you just said. This is going to get to one of your others in your points about the unified character, the unified appearance. I am less concerned about windows on the east side, although you could certainly create some false windows that might relieve that facade. But I am not very concerned about windows on the east side. Again, maybe some false windows. I don't know what they're for, because it's not a false storefront window, it's just I mean, you could create, I guess you could create some niches or some blinds that are in there that give some relief to those concrete panels. So you put some variety of textures on that side wall on the east. On the west, I'm concerned that between the bays and what's visible from the street, that rendering, which we actually don't see very much of in any of these views, is the view that people see of Goochland. It's the last thing you see as they leave Centerville and enter into the greater Chopin area. And, coming into the community, it's a gateway, and leaving the community, it's a gateway too. It says, thank you for visiting Goochland. And, if the last thing we're looking at is kind of the beginning of a big blank wall behind the bays, I would be interested in a little more articulation on those facades.
Which area? West.
Yeah, that's right. Where Ray is, so here and here. And then to the extent that this begins to be visible from Broad Street Road, that's a pretty
I don't know that
unrelieved,
it will be, but.
unfortunately, that's not a rendering.
With trees, and that's about 300 feet back from the road at that point for that
Yeah.
access drive,
Right. And what's the elevation at this point?
28 feet.
28 feet?
28 feet to the top of the deck.
Okay.
And the top of the roof of the main showroom is only 30 feet.
You've done this in SketchUp or another type of rendering.
Yep.
If we could see that view, that was not included in the package, kind of like that. So just the view from the northwest and the southeast. Building south-southeast.
We didn't have it in the packet, we have it.
You do have it?
I mean, no, I don't think we
No,
did.
I don't.
I mean, I would be interested in seeing that, because if that can be ruled out, then it's not really an issue.
So for both sides, you're just talking about the monotony, like kind of just breaking up the.
Correct. And on the west side, I'm more concerned about it from Broad Street Road than I am from the neighbor, because we know the neighbor is practically undevelopable, and so, when we get to the back, then we're gonna talk about, I wanna talk about unified character, and I think that this is not a unified character of design, and my biggest question is gonna be, you're ready to go there,
Yeah.
about windows, okay. So, at the rear of the building, on the southern elevation, on this elevation, there are areas of open wall in there. There's no screening, there's no veneer wall, there's no, I know you have a grill or a wire mesh at some point, but I would want to see those more unified, and I think you can do that with precast panels with a brick veneer, or you could do it with something that ties into your theme. I would be interested in, typical parking deck, kind of enhancements of a living wall, or again, some sort of a wall with a material there instead of just open.
Yeah,
Especially to the south. I mean, there are views from those townhomes, especially as you look at the south end of that building. Yes, respectfully, when they look due west, they don't see it very much, but when they look just immediately outside of that, they're gonna see it.
On the other homes are gonna see the side of the wall and partially the
Right.
precast concrete, which is gonna be kind of a monolithic white wall in front of them.
I'd be concerned about losing the percentage of openness of the building for vehicles being parked in there, right, and fumes and that. I don't know if you'd be open to, continuing whatever screen we can maybe come to a conclusion on, if we're showing the west side continuing along that back south side is a possibility.
Yeah, I would. I mean, there
It's Tracing material, but.
Yeah, I certainly would. There are many excellent parking garage enhancements that have been built over the last 100 years that allow some screening, whether that's just up to a 3 or 4 foot, knee wall type level, or fully wire, or some version of a planted area. People are doing that with great success. So, something that's not an open section at the back of the wall.
Yeah, particularly for the townhome view.
Yes.
That's on the back side and on the east elevation. I mean, I don't think they're not going to be happy with the white wall either. I don't know if there's anything to be done about that, of which, isn't, I mean, you've got the glass and then you've got white, so it's not consistent all the way around, which doesn't necessarily have to be, but it's helpful if they are, if you can be consistent in kind of the character of it from all angles, which it really isn't right now.
Constructability wise, there's two different things going on here. So one of them is a precast structure, which is really the parking garage component. And then the other half of that forward to the showroom is a conventional steel construction system. So there are ways to blend them correctly. But can you elaborate just a little bit more on your last point you just made?
Well, I've looked at the site where the townhomes are, and obviously the drawings of how close it's going to be to those townhomes. There really isn't room for trees and shrubs and stuff to buffer it. But it's going to be a less than ideal view for them, which is, they're lucky if we get to do something else. But our main concern is the overall character of it, which the precast concrete doesn't really fit in with the small town character.
The Audi's got precast concrete walls around their building.
They're not flat, I mean, if those are concrete, there's texture to
Yeah,
them.
they got some texture, we
Yeah.
got some reveals cut in the side of the bar to create some look, some character
Okay.
to the precast panels, but it's no different than what Audi had used on their building. They have a fluted, concrete panel, right? So there's different effects
Yeah.
if the liner,
Yeah,
if
it
the
just-
reveals in that, are, you know.
Yeah, that just, that has a
doesn't
lot of depth
either
and
one of
texture
those
to it, so
really-
it doesn't look as monolithic.
Yeah, no, neither of those show, that's a metal siding that's on top of that. It's actually in the back
Right.
side, that's not a view,
Yeah.
that's cement. Yeah, so the back side where their service is at is all precast concrete walls. Yes.
But it's gray to match the front to
And there
some,
might be some flexibility
you don't want to
in
be
the
gray, 'cause
white
that's
to
out.
go to a gray,
Yeah.
or that's an option.
yeah, maybe,
Potential.
something more of an earth tone as opposed to glaring white.
Yeah, like bring it, it's doing a precast. And then originally this was approved with the green wall, they eventually came back and modified that for the landscape, updated landscape kind of walls.
Yeah, green one would be nice.
Would you agree that could be a potential concession
Yeah.
to change from the white to maybe a more of a gray or earth tone gray or something?
I think it's gonna get warmed up.
A little warmed up.
And the bay doors, what will those look like when they're closed? So we see in the pictures of the Audi, you can see what those look like, but I didn't see anything that really shows.
They look just like those.
Very similar.
They'll probably be
Very,
very,
very
similar.
that's pretty standard.
Those are called right tech doors, they already have a similar look, they have a 9-inch tall glass. Is that full vision?
Those are high-speed doors, when you roll up them, the door zips up. Very,
I'm
very
familiar
quick.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I missed what you said, I guess, about, you were talking about potential color alteration or something. Was that what you said, warm it up, or?
Along the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's along with looking at the screening you were talking about, Josh, on the back.
Correct. I mean, let's see some options. Right now, it's definitely a very different section with the open wall, plus the, you've got the precast and then the metal screens and the open section. Those are three different characters going on. I mean, whether it's a sand, like a beige sand, or a light gray, or whatever, I would be fairly, I wouldn't want to specify that. We'd be interested to see what you bring back.
Yeah, okay.
I think as far as the roof, I don't think I have any questions on that. I'm not super concerned with it, because I know flat roofs are quite common in this kind of a building. And from what I read, things are screened
Yes.
in terms of the utilities, right?
Correct.
Right, they sort of up here, and then you have the stairs in the back. And I guess this is sort of the outdoor area. for,
Correct.
Coffee shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my-
Open waiting room.
My only comment on the roof is that many of the buildings in Centerville through Western Shore Pump, some are very high style, like the hospital buildings down the road. Some, like the Aldi and the CVS, are somewhat traditional in their building materials with simulated stone and brick and cornice. None of those have pitch roofs. They're all flat roofs, but it's a classic style. I would be interested, as we were talking about, that sort of front-facing moored system. If there's something that would create a cornice. You've got kind of a raceway going on with that blue header. I would be interested if there's something that's consistent with the Honda aesthetic, but is more, creates a cap or a cornice to that upper wall, so it's not just a flat run, from the bottom to the top. Again, I wouldn't prescribe it, but I would be interested in seeing something that matches with what you're trying to do on the front facade, because it works its way around. You have a modern style here, so it's cornice in a modern style, not necessarily well together all the time.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the louvers, and I know it's just an idea that you're throwing out there, but I know for certain, I won't let us touch where those louvers are in this particular example. Like moving those down is not going to be a.
So the forehead that you talked about would be a precast panel?
Well, that's a white ACM panel right now. That's what's flanking out beyond the blue going to the right, for example. Yeah.
Right here, I got you.
There you go. Yeah, that's a white metal panel, a white ACM panel. So that white ACM panel is envisioning would wrap across the front,
Across the
that's
top.
the forehead.
Kind of solid as a header.
And that, yes, and that would just drop down. That, whatever that, distance feels like
Yeah.
comfortable with, bring that across and play around with a little bit, bring that down. And that would create, not say your cornice, but it would create that parapet across the top of that all the way around the three sides.
And again, we looked at Tommy's as something that had to be essentially mitigated, right? So there was no change in the front facade of that building. So we ended up with a treatment along the roadside that allowed it. So we may get to a point where we've addressed a lot of the building materials character, but really we're going to say either a berming or some low wall like we want appropriate. And we do have an interesting character with that low wall that's out there. It starts to remind people that you're coming into horse country and that you're in the countryside, even though it doesn't feel like I'm here. And so there is some of that's happening. Okay.
How about the parking? I think that was the next thing on the list.
So I think we pretty much addressed that, the color potential, facades, materials, so I feel like we've addressed each of those.
Yep.
Roof, maybe we just addressed that. Parking.
Just you want to take the lead or?
So, I guess in, Ray, in your write-up, there's the additional parking over on the side, not right in front of the building, is not behind the building, closer than the front facade setback. And then I guess you guys have talked about making that only be customer parking as opposed to vehicle display, but it would still plan to be parking.
Yeah, we're kind of limited where customers can park in front of the building based on all our constraints.
So they wouldn't be parking in the parking lot.
No, it's mostly for inventory. Primarily inventory, I should say.
I'm gonna throw an oddball thing out there, but I've seen some really well-done covered parking with solar panels, and it's part of an LID strategy. And I would be interested if you would ask Conda, your client too, essentially, but if that's something they would consider to put a structural element into the area beyond the second row of parking that creates the non-conformance with the code. So essentially, covered parking here, it can be a couple structures at a time or however it's done. I've seen it in sunny places all over the place, and I've seen it in the mountains a lot. You get a structural element there. And so what it allows you to do is with surface parking, that you introduce a structural element where it's not just a field of parking.
So just any type of covered parking there?
Solar panels on top, is
Yeah,
what you're talking
I
about.
mean, I would be interested in that. It's honestly, it's the way of the future. There are a lot of folks who are beginning to do that with many storage facilities because it's essentially, it's prime real estate, it's just using it. But whether it has a solar panel or not, it has some architectural character to it. Consistent with character to your architectural thing.
You could put the EV chargers there for your customers.
Charging off the sun.
Yeah. So, and again, I would be looking at something like, you can get to a 50% goal, then I think you step it.
If that parking structure is more at the back, well, that would be for display models, so it's going to have customers parking at the front, presuming that it's not going to be a bank of cars at the very front. So,
Yeah, I mean, just an opinion,
Yeah.
but the reality of it is usually the cars at a car dealership that are new and for sale are nicer than the cars that are coming in from the customers that represent a range of models, because there's a more consistent theme in the newer cars than there is in 20 years worth of cars being serviced. So having customer parking along the front, I don't think is necessarily an enhanced aesthetic.
Yeah.
So, but to comply with the standards of the code, I would be interested in looking at something structural beyond your second row.
So I have to ask a question, because I'm not really following this discussion. So I don't see anything in the code, forgive the lawyer for having to argue this or anything, but I don't see there being a prohibition of a double row of parking. The way the ordinance reads, the goal is to break up parking areas within a development by implementing one or more of the following concepts. So one of the three things that they highlight here is no more than a double row of parking on the street frontage. So I think, you all have sort of interpreted this, we have more than a double row on the street frontage, that's fine. But, number 2 says distribute parking area on all sides, front, rear, side of the building. I'm just reading the way the code is written here. And so that's what we have done in this case. We have tried to distribute the parking, we just don't have a sea of parking in front or in back. We have some parking in the front, we have some parking on the side, we have some parking in the rear, we've got the parking deck. This is one of those areas that we really don't have much flexibility. We can't reconfigure the parking because of the way the site is laid out in order to meet the parking requirements that the county has. There just isn't any other way to configure the parking. So I guess I'm not really sure I'm understanding what we're trying to meet here, because the double row of parking is not necessarily an express prohibition. In code.
So, thank you, Ron. So this is a 41,000 square foot building. Is it meeting the minimum parking standards or exceeding the minimum parking standards?
It's slightly over, I think we're required to have 81, we have about 100 right now, surface parking.
Okay.
I don't know can you say how that's calculated between inventory and customers?
That's
No, it's not inventory. That has nothing to do with inventory. That just has to do with required parking and what's available on the surface.
Right. Between that and, because you have standard parking for the auto dealership, and we have the service parking
Correct.
requirements
Yeah,
for day
employee.
per bay, employees.
Correct.
Been a while since I looked, I can't remember exactly where it settled out. But that's one of those things that, of course, I think there's a condition when we double check, and of course, the time with the meeting about how the balance works out for service and customer parking. Part of that, as a reminder, they did proffer that nothing, all this way would be customer availability, so the display is limited really back to this portion of the property, whatever we have in the parking deck. And, another, as, a part of the mitigation factor, as I mentioned before, staff was recommending additional landscaping or higher landscaping up there to really, to play off of that. Part of that really is you really don't want, let's see, headlights, and you don't want a massive parking, is what the intent of the proffer is.
Yeah, I think the natural screening with the landscaping is going to be a key thing with the berm and everything.
Which if you look, we do have hedging all the way along there,
Yeah.
all those trees.
And I guess the other thing I would say about the parking, we had sort of looked at addressing this through landscaping. If you all want to see additional landscaping, we're happy to look at that. I think when we start talking about reconfiguring the parking, trying to do that, we were asked to proffer the concept. So we start redoing the site, we got to go back through zoning.
Understood.
And we can't do that. Just to be honest with you, we don't have the time to do that. So we're happy to sort of address this in other ways. Maybe the way, some other folks have doing additional landscaping.
So if you were to propose additional landscaping, would it be along road frontage or would it be internal? And have you worked through that?
It's open for discussion, right? I think by the letter of landscape requirements, by the formula, we're required to have 1,620 square feet. And right now, we're already providing 4,350 square feet of landscape area around this facility. So if you want us to do some additional, it's open for discussion on what makes sense to add some additional
Yeah, Ray,
landscaping.
didn't you have some conversations with the applicant?
We've talked, as I mentioned before, the concept is really, here's the landscaping plan. So each of these islands would be required to have treed islands. There is the perimeter, so there's different landscaping requirements under the code. For this is the typical Centerville buffer, which really is a pretty de minimis buffer for that. Part of the discussion as a mitigating factor, like I said, was to really try to raise up the shrubbery so it's a little bit higher growing and it can be maintained at a higher height than what was initially proposed. So that would be something that could help mitigate sort of the impact of the buffer, that along with the elevation for that. So that was really staff's recommendation at one point to at least address a different species and something that goes taller. Burford holly was one that was a potential for that. There were other opportunities out there for that, to do that, and potentially, as you noticed, as you mentioned, Mr. Gillespie, this is an area that is going to be graded to a certain extent. It doesn't have a lot of depth for the remainder of the buffer with the standard trees and the things we like. So that we saw the hedge opportunity as something that would serve as a mitigating factor. We also recognize this is something that's a code provision that we had to address. And we also recognize that the eastern side of the property doesn't really have another opportunity for parking or work.
Thank you.
On that
We've also
western-
addressed kind of that corner as you're coming in, that northeast corner as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as you're coming in and leaving.
right.
But I think we've seen other conditions, in particular for the bays. The parking's been a different story, but if we're taking for the bays, is we've had a combination of landscaping and the low stone wall houses that are at the alley and the other types of uses. So that would be a consideration for both. The only area that's of concern for the wall is typically up in this corner.
Right.
But most of the vegetation and things are up here, really at the perimeter, right where the customer parking is.
We would not be able to put a wall over Ruby easement, just like
Across the easement,
Right.
30-foot
Yeah.
easement.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't put
So
plantings
typically
or
there's a
can't put any
separation.
structures over that.
right. They let you do the shrubs and stuff, but
Yeah.
if you have a wall, they need.
So maybe on some of those radiuses though, there's an opportunity to put some walls in that. I don't know if you put it in front or behind the 3 or 4 foot hedging, if it's gonna make a difference. I think most of those walls are about 2 or 3 feet tall,
That's
you know,
right.
which is about actually lower maybe than our hedges. So maybe we can introduce something slightly in front or on some of the curvature of the entrance and exits.
Yeah,
There might be some possibility to pick something up there, bring that element into the site.
I think you're totally onto it there. A Burford holly can get 6 feet tall, and ideally they're maintained 3 to 5 feet or 3 to 4 feet. But, a low stone wall on the backside of that
Yeah.
doesn't really do very much for people. On the road side of that, obviously it would. The 3 islands that are the beginning of the double row that are open on the north side, right? If you take the pointer to your left.
To the north.
Nope, to your left.
This
To
is
your
west.
left, to your left. from
You're
there.
talking about
Yeah, so
Yeah,
one of
here,
those
here.
three there. Right. It looks like there's a light in one of those, or light pole or standard, but.
yeah, there's a light pole over here.
Right. Are those interior islands able to be landscaped on both ends?
They are interior islands. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Can they be landscaped on both sides? They're landscaped 50%, so can they be landscaped on both sides?
I think it's for you.
Yeah, I don't,
Your light.
do you see an issue with that? I wouldn't see an issue to have some more landscaping.
Pole
with
light.
that.
Light poles there.
Yeah, light pole.
Is that
Is that with the light
light?
poles?
Yeah.
They look like,
Um,
you can zoom in.
We will pull up the lighting plan.
Well, you can see a light on
Put
the
the light
on the
poles.
westernmost.
So,
There you go.
So really, you have center, it looks like you have the center lights.
yeah, we do have some lights in the
Double
center.
lights here.
They're in the center though, so we could put something low,
Right.
right? Some kind of.
Do you remember what those trees are? I can't remember.
Hang on, I can tell you.
Typically, they're large growing, I don't know if you got smaller growing.
Those are the London plane trees,
Okay.
2.5-inch caliber.
Mhm. These,
Okay. So an ornamental, like a crepe myrtle or a redbud would go on the street side.
Yeah, we can put something on it.
So I'd be interested in seeing the walls to the extent that they can be inserted around your entrances. Again, as a somewhat, decorative architectural feature, but the ones in place that have been installed have repetition to them that has some kind of rhythm. And also they can be used as low seating walls. So to the extent that they have a purpose and a use, I think that makes them more valuable. And that may not be, this property is not necessarily as conducive to that as some of the other sites have been, so you have to look very carefully. There's a lot of traffic that goes from the apartments to Green Gate. So, this is an area that is pedestrian in its nature. I mean, I know it's the side of the road, it's a car dealership, but there are a lot of people that walk through
It
there,
is.
and there will be more over time. So,
right.
as those commercial buildings open up on your property next door, your neighbor, more and more retail and service establishments are being placed in these areas.
So, I'm sorry, let me make sure I understand what we're asking for in this area. So additional trees in the islands.
Small trees.
Okay.
And which did you recommend?
I mean, I would think a crepe myrtle or redbud, something understory. We have recommended trees, species, right?
Right.
So just pull off the Goochland recommended small
Sure.
tree species,
Okay.
understory.
And then you mentioned reference the landscape and walls.
The stone walls near the entrances and to the extent that they serve a purpose.
Okay.
So, I think the ones that we've had done were a good idea, and I think they were I think the extension of that idea has been really well executed. So I wouldn't want to see them gratuitously added just because we like stone walls in Richland. But I think if you do them well, that adds some value.
Only if it adds
So-
something to make it
Okay.
more.
So generally at the
fitting with the
entrance.
character.
Okay, the entrance ways and perhaps supplementing, I guess, view locations, is that what you're getting at? Or-
I would expect the designers to respond to their particular context.
Okay. Work together. Okay.
So this will all be in lieu of the canopy?
I think the canopy at the kind of the head of the glass.
No,
No,
it was
the parking.
Solar,
Solar
solar
canopy.
structure.
Yes,
Piece.
yeah.
Alright. Alright, next was the fencing. If we feel like we've addressed parking,
I would like to see what they bring back to us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we will do that. Alright, to be clear, the only place the black vinyl coated fencing is around the booster station. So the other fence that we show is vinyl for profit, and that's at the Henrico boundary. So it's here.
Yeah, I just felt more durable, easier to maintain, especially with the hedgerows that we're gonna put the evergreens are gonna put in front of them.
Where's
And
the
then-
fence on the Henrico side?
On the top of that retaining
Oh, on the
wall
top of
there.
your retaining wall, okay, I was like,
Yes.
gotcha.
And they're also proposing some landscaping on the exterior of the chain link. Is that
Right.
Correct, on
Right.
two sides.
So these are 6 foot, actually, I think Burford Hollies is the, what we did there.
Yeah, it's all grown in.
So it's full, yeah, fuller grown, evergreens.
They were called out as, I think these are Leland cypress.
Okay,
Minimum-
excuse me,
minimum
which is
6 foot.
fine, so we have approved evergreen that would be located there, so it probably was the Lelands.
Question for you. When people do fencing like that around some structure to hide it, is it normally, I think we said this is gonna be 8 feet high?
6 to 8 feet is gonna be where it's flexible.
Okay.
Just try to think about.
Thank
Really
you.
not flexible.
I mean, have we had,
Only 6 feet short, 6 feet.
I mean, 8 feet sounds awfully high. I'm not sure that that would be necessary. There's no fencing around it currently, right?
Currently, of course, the site is currently recessed by itself, well vegetated and gated. The concern came about as now this is vital infrastructure. Excuse me. That's now open to public view. Also, and then from the client's perspective, it's also probably
Yeah,
a little
well,
aesthetically
safety for
unpleasing
People, like,
for that. Jeez. So the main thing the county was concerned about is just access to the site from the utility standpoint. For us, planning and the ordinance side is concerned about aesthetics. For such a site, standardly fences are 6 to 7 feet tall. It wouldn't be unusual if you have a security situation that you may make it taller. And I don't think they've given us a full, that applicant, they've had more conversations with utilities on the specifics of the fencing, if there was a height requirement from them. Planning staff will verify what the utilities want,
Yeah.
regardless of what materials.
That was part of the proffer, that whatever is approved has to be vetted through utilities.
I know we're gonna flip on the height, 6 feet maybe is fine,
Right.
you know, it's enough of a deterrent for someone not to climb over. Sure.
and barbed wire on the top, yeah.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, the razor wire aesthetic is really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it made of?
Visual.
What is the material?
That's right.
Is staff aware of any stormwater management ponds within this design corridor, design area that has fencing around it?
In Goochland?
In this
In this
Centerville?
particular similar area? Yes, there is one with Page Alley and that behind Chick-fil-A, and that area is one that actually has a wrought iron capital.
Oh, it's cast aluminum, basically.
Right. It has the look of wrought iron, which really cast
Right.
type of thing. And
It's
it's
probably-
also well planted, vegetated.
Right. And it's closer into their kind of use areas, I would expect. I don't know exactly where that one is.
Yeah,
Maybe not their site, but, the proposed development.
anything like that. Yeah. So basically, if it's directly behind the Chick-fil-A area, I can get there if you need us to.
Is there an aerial?
Yeah.
While Mr. Cash is bringing that up, would you be amenable to an alternative? I mean, it's a cast aluminum, it's not really expensive, a cast aluminum fence section
It's not too bad.
as opposed to vinyl or chain link.
As long as we can get a nice thing, that'd be interesting to see it work, because we're providing, I think, a 20-foot wide opening, so 2 10-foot gates. So as long as they can be durable enough out of that material to withstand, multiple cycles of openings over the years without, maintenance and breaking down. I guess that was a lot of the concern.
The cast aluminum look, has a nice look to it, that's what, around where I am, there's a lot of those, and it's,
Yeah, I mean, I
It's-
just think it's like a chain link, you have to have enough piping and tubing to give it the reinforcement, so
Right.
it's sag over time, but it's like,
yeah.
So I would ask and posit that that's probably a better
Look at-
material, and because your green landscaping is gonna be your primary screen anyway, the fencing is just a physical deterrent. So,
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
I mean, there's always the white PVC, but the cast aluminum is gonna be less of an eyesore.
Sure. And it won't draw attention,
So
right? It won't draw attention to that area.
Right.
it's several years old. That is a large BMP structure over
Okay.
here, but I can get to the road version of that. Let's see.
you talking street level view or?
Well, I could go to, I'd have to go out
Uh-huh.
to Google. No, thanks for giving me no address. 12592.
sort of along the road frontage or more prominent, I would be interested in some columns or things or something that would give the fence some character, but there's no architectural character that you're really responding to, so I don't think that's important.
Just that the screening is gonna be
Yeah.
good.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, to be honest, cast aluminum is a more durable material than chain link, so
Sure. I agree with
it's a
that.
heavier gauge, it lasts longer.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Okay.
Assuming that you can meet the gate requirements that we need.
Okay.
Alrighty, here you go, maybe we can get a better street view for wings.
Perfect.
So there you go.
Okay.
That's something about what, 3, 4 foot tall?
That's probably.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
slightly below grade even, and.
Right, yeah, it's sort of just past the toe
Uh-huh.
slope, it's there. Pretty much planted with combination of wax myrtles, river birches.
Would you be okay with the lower height? Would it have to be 6 foot?
I think utilities has to answer that question. I mean, I'm okay with the lower height.
Yeah.
I think if it's back planted or even foreplanted with materials, especially if they're hollies and they have stickers on them,
Yeah.
people are not gonna wanna go through
I
that.
think they were more concerned about the turn as well.
Yep.
Just someone just
Yep.
casually
You
just
don't
walking
care,
on.
exactly, just
over the
wander there,
bunkhouse.
oh, what is this? I'll pull that.
Wait, it
paper.
sounds like you're talking about two, it sounds like you're talking about the stormwater pond, it sounds like you're talking about the pump house.
We're talking about the pump house.
We're talking about using this stormwater pond fencing as the model around the pump house.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's how they
So
get
off the
connected.
chain
We're
link?
we're not talking about stormwater.
In place of chain link, which is not permitted, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is this, I just want to make sure I understand, the cast aluminum is permitted, and we wouldn't need an exception for that. So if we.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
If we decide that that's
Work out
okay, public utilities is okay with that.
Then it's just a staff action.
Yeah, I want to talk to Wayne's. I was gonna just confirm.
And I know the spring is the big aspect of it, so.
Discussion we'll have to have. with-
Yeah.
And if they're not okay with it, then you can elevate it, right? You can go 6 feet, and then that may solve their concern. If it addresses their concern, it's still down at a staff administrative level. All right, well, I think that brings us to number 6.
Which is the bay doors. Okay.
Was, so there was mention of the screening for the dumpster. I don't know, for some reason I have that linked with the bay doors, but I don't know if that was an issue or not.
Yeah, well, in the applicant's presentation, they did give you a better detail of that. I can quickly show you if they don't mind. So there it is. So it's actually, what the screening will be for the dumpster area will be the precast
Kind of
concrete.
match the same,
Yeah.
yeah, precast panels and the walls.
So match the color, and then they'll have Trex Gate, which is manufactured material, but it's very sturdy.
It's composite.
It's composite, right?
Yeah, durable, lasts a long time. This is similar, this is right in line with what Audi has as well.
Yeah, which is pretty common now in the area. But what we were looking at was the bay doors.
All right, so the applicant is proposing an additional 5 evergreen specimens. What are those species, what are those?
Let's see, I think it's some sort of holly.
You know the landscape plan for these already? So I can confirm. I don't know what I'm talking about.
American holly.
The American Hollies.
And that's, yeah, right. 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty sure that's the ones. Right, so American holly, 6 feet.
That's correct. In addition to changing those to the Buford,
Huh?
in addition to changing the hedgerow to
Right,
the Buford.
right.
Hollies.
Yeah. Should get a, taller.
They're taller. 4 foot or so.
Something that, Carissa's eventually gets to 3 feet, but I don't think I'll be around that. But something that gets there quicker. So Burford's probably for it, but we can always work on it.
And it's more commonly used, right, in the area, so that makes sense. To change those
Something
6
big
feet.
for the area.
Right, correct.
I would just ask, as you're looking at your roadside layout for stone walls, that you look at this section, and whether it's 3 evergreens, 5 evergreens, there's a lot of power and eyes on the street and people being able to see into and through properties, and so we're trying to screen it, but I don't really want to see a big green wall on Broad Street Road. I think that's antithetical to what we're trying to do with our urban character and the street character. So I would be interested in having a very sensitive treatment of the interplay between the wall and the greenery. Again, whether it's 2, 3, 5, whatever, that with a wall, I think it's a little better than just a big green wall.
Yeah, we talked about that because, again, if you, I did that, didn't I? I'm sorry.
That's okay. What do you want to get?
I changed the,
Oh, the view in, just the zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Magnification.
I can't see that.
And break.
The county attorney is school.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. So we did, we'll look into it further, to your point, but we did
Okay.
take that consideration because, again, this sanitary line is right here, which is right there in the front. So we couldn't, we were gonna put, actually, we were contemplating putting a wall right here in front, but we decided to go with the trees because of that easement constraint we have with that sewer line going right there.
And
And then our pinch point, that sewer line as it comes through is right in our corner. So we can't push the building really in either direction.
I think as we work through the revised layout for that, there's opportunities to probably catch the weeds at different angles. If you recall, it's kind of it's a tilted angle, that's sort of deceptive the way the property comes up. So if we do utilize the walls, and the combination of landscaping will probably, there's potential we could look to mitigate that view
Yeah.
for visibility.
Agreed.
Because the straight on view is kind of deceptive for this, because if you're straight across where this angle is, your view shed's probably be able to accomplish.
Yeah, and you're lower on your western edge, and you're higher as you come to the eastern side of the property. But there may be some play in there we can do with some of the walls, so we'll look at that, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
understand.
keep in mind too, again, that, like I said before, it's back about 160 feet or so.
So I would ask if a projection could be considered here, and that projection, like basically a glass projection or louvers either way, but that does the same, doing a light cast and shadow cast on the facade of the bay board, so it's going to actually also kind of minimize those bays. You follow?
Yeah. We go to the elevations of the building.
Like who's the one?
Yeah, there's an eyebrow element that goes above that right now. Keep going. Yeah, you can see it.
Oops, there it is.
Top.
Nope.
Top left.
Right
Yeah,
there,
that
eyebrow
piece
right there.
projects probably a couple feet from the base.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so there's a shadow line that you're not seeing right there.
No, I see a little bit of it on here. Is that 3 feet or more, or?
I think it's a couple feet.
Couple feet.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else on the bay doors? Because the other things impact everything a lot more.
In this scenario compared to other ones we've had is there's more ability to hide it at the elevation. So we thought, judging by what we've treated in the past, this is one that would probably easily address.
Yeah, because it's not prominent right in front, it's set pretty
Yeah,
far
the
back.
setback helps, I think, and so it might be, get more advantage from the landscaping because it is set back and,
I will note that the other 3 cases with using the walls, they were kind of a blue-gray combination with cap walls. You want that or similar?
Yep.
Okay. And we'll talk about that, how it matches up with your sign. Was, you know, 'cause you already got stone at the base there, so typically in sign approvals, we want to match materials on the side.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, all you come back, maybe someday we have to do some slight adjustments to other things that you have. Doesn't, I mean, most of the stuff's already been approved.
Yeah, we make
It's
sure
not
all the
major changes,
materials-
just make sure all the elements match up to what you do. Sorry.
Thank you. So the one item we've really not addressed is the white and blue, which is the predominant color scheme, which are not earth tone colors. And all,
we kind of addressed it for the side, but not, well, I mean, we got glass in front, but then there's still the white on the front of the bay doors and on the western side.
So I would ask, as you put together your kind of overall package and your narrative for how you can describe that, consider the mitigation that you're doing to minimize the non-earth tones which are required in the code. So that's, without seeing that yet, I would say that's an unresolved issue this time. So, it's a car dealer issue. I know in Albemarle County and Charlottesville, Subaru, they really wanted a blue building and they had to fight a lot for what they got. So they ended up with simulated stone at their base and, they made compromises. I would like for you to verbally address that in your package because we've got a couple of different elements here that we work with.
Yeah, then also if you're looking at making it a little bit more characteristic with the Centerville character, that would apply all the way around it. So it's not just the one side that the townhomes are looking at, but really the whole thing. So the other side as well, which I think is what we're getting at. So the whole thing should be, a consistent picture.
So if there's some, steel grays, pewter grays, something that works in your light blue color scheme, we can introduce a little bit more of that. I think that helps knock down the whites and you still get what you're going for on your prototype, but it doesn't have that issue. These are only colors. Blue and white. I want to thank everybody for working with us this evening in the conversation. I'm very interested in our next conversation. We're going into the holiday period, so November and early December becomes a little difficult to schedule for everybody. We'll be here as called. So.
Right, yeah, and I know that client applicant is interested in moving forward as soon as they can, so we'll be contacting
I mean, I know-
arrange for dates.
I know you don't know a time off the top of your head, but what is your, what do you think your turnaround time will be to be able to respond to the comments?
We're gonna try to get this turnaround. 2 weeks is gonna be fast. 3 is probably more realistic. There's more conversations with other people.
Understood.
Yeah.
Just so we can kind of get an understanding
Yeah.
when we work out.
I mean, ideally, we'd love to try to, love to try to get together, maybe the 20th, but we gotta have some other conversations to see if that's realistic.
Yeah, so, if I can ask the question, I know we're here late. If the two of you would be agreeable, I would love to just have like a 10-minute recess to just chat with these guys because I want to be realistic about the time frame.
Understood.
We're trying to move as quickly as we can, but I also don't want to overpromise what we can do. Would you all be agreeable to just 10 minutes, allowing us to sort of?
That's fine. I mean, before you do that,
Yeah.
Mr. Rockmell, I would say the first week or two in December is probably the first time I would be interested in calling and bringing that together. And again, that's dependent on our chair who's not here. I can't even begin to speak to Isabel. The week of Thanksgiving is a very difficult week for coverage. Even if you're 1 or 2 people down, that can mean a lot. And then it's the week after that we have to recover. So I would just say generally I would be looking for the first or second week in December, whatever it is.
Sure, and the other thing I want to do with it, when we can do it in 10 minutes, I just want to make sure we have the same lists.
Sure.
To make sure we're not missing anything, because I think when we come back, I think our goal is to sort of agree at that time. I don't think we can afford to continue to push it out. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page and we're being transparent with what we have to do.
And I'll just add, and I haven't discussed with my staff, so I'll be looking forward to talking with them too, and y'all. I mean, it sounds like you're wanting them to come back, but if there is any, that doesn't have to be the case. So I didn't want you to think that two of you couldn't act, two of you can act tonight. So if you think there's a way to,
Yes.
write things that staff could approve it with certain percentages or conditions, and I just want to make sure that everyone has that understanding.
Thank you. I understand that. I would like to see some alternatives to the back of the building that
Okay.
that need to be illustrated.
Gotcha. Just didn't want it to go unstated.
But through the meantime, staff will work out best to make sure they're sort of reaching what we believe your vision is. So it'll be the next meeting will be fruitful.
Yeah, hey,
Warren,
can we pause? Can we take a 10-minute pause?
I'm not sure what that's gonna do,
Okay.
but okay.
You just.
Thank you.
Do you want the room, or do you want to take another?